You're holding two things in your hands, a handful of black magnets and a spool of spider silk thinner than anything you've ever touched. Someone just told you these two objects, and nothing else, are enough to build a working pair of headphones. You almost laugh. One of these is a rock, the other came out of a spider's body. And yet, somewhere between them is sound itself, waiting to be built. Here's the part that should stop you completely. Every headphone on Earth, from the cheapest earbuds to the ones costing thousands of dollars, is built on exactly this idea: a magnet and something thin enough to vibrate. That's it. That's the whole secret the entire audio industry is quietly sitting on. You're not doing something new. You're doing something ancient, just with stranger materials. So let's actually build it. Not later. Right now. Stay with this, because the ending is going to surprise you. Let's slow down on the magnet for a second, because it deserves more credit than just a rock. Long before anyone understood electricity, people found chunks of naturally magnetized stone called lodestones and had no explanation for why they pulled at metal from across a table. It looked like magic then. It's still, technically, invisible force acting at a distance now. We've just learned to control it. So the object in your hand isn't a shortcut you're taking. It's the same unexplained force humans have been quietly exploiting for centuries, now shrunk down and pointed at a job it was never designed for. Step 1 is the magnet, and you already have this part solved. But holding a magnet does nothing on its own. A magnet just sitting there is silent, useless. It needs a partner, something moving near it, because a magnetic field only becomes sound when it's paired with motion. So the real question isn't how strong is your magnet, it's what are you going to make move? That's where the spider silk stops looking useless and starts looking like the missing half of the machine. Spider silk isn't just strong for its size, it's absurdly light, and it's almost unbelievably responsive. Its strength comes from a layered structure built from spider silk proteins, arranged in nanofibril and shell-like patterns. That structure is why a single strand can flex thousands of times a second without tearing. And thousands of times a second is not a random detail. That happens to be exactly the range human hearing lives in. Here's where it gets strange. A strand of spider silk is only around 4 microns thick, compared to a human hair at roughly 60 microns. So you're not holding string, you're holding something closer to a whisper you could wrap around your finger. And a material that thin, that light, is precisely what a speaker diaphragm wants to be. Because the lighter the moving part, the faster it can react to a signal, and the cleaner the sound comes out. You should feel good about this. You should not feel good yet. Because a stretched strand of silk sitting in front of a magnet still produces total silence. Nothing happens. You could stare at it for a year and hear nothing. The missing ingredient isn't more silk, and it isn't a stronger magnet. It's electricity, moving in a very specific pattern. This is where real headphones cheat, and where you're going to cheat too. Around your magnet, you wrap a coil of extremely thin wire, and you rest that coil close to the silk membrane. When an electrical audio signal, the actual encoded sound from a song or a voice, runs through that coil, the coil generates its own magnetic field. That field fights and dances with the magnet's fixed field, and the coil physically jumps back and forth thousands of times per second. Attach that jumping coil to your spider silk membrane, and suddenly the silk isn't just sitting there, it's shaking. That shaking is the entire trick. Air doesn't care what pushed it. It only cares that something moved it, fast, back and forth, in a precise pattern. When your silk membrane vibrates in that pattern, it shoves air molecules outward in matching waves. Those waves travel to your eardrum copies the exact same vibration, and your brain reads that motion as music. You didn't create sound, you recreated a shape, in silk, and let the air carry the shape to your head. Let that sit for a second, because it explains something bigger than headphones. Sound was never really about the material. Paper cones, plastic domes, metal foils, silk membranes. None of them are magic. They're just messengers. The only real requirement is that something thin enough moves fast enough, close enough to a magnet to push air in the right rhythm. Spider silk simply happens to be one of the best messengers biology has ever produced, because it's light enough to move instantly and tough enough not to fall apart doing it. Now here's a twist most people don't expect. Spider silk isn't just mechanically strange, it's thermally strange too. Dragline spider silk has been measured with thermal conductivity as high as 416 watts per meter Kelvin, a number that rivals many metals. That means a working spider silk diaphragm wouldn't just move air efficiently, it would also shed heat from the coil faster than traditional speaker materials, which matters because heat is one of the quiet enemies of long-term audio quality. Push a normal diaphragm too hard for too long, and heat starts warping it. Silk, oddly, refuses to be bothered by that in the same way. There's a catch though, and you probably already sense it coming. Spider silk absorbs moisture aggressively. It's considered one of the most naturally moisture-sensitive materials known, changing behavior noticeably with humidity. A membrane that shifts every time the air gets damp is a membrane that changes its sound every time you sweat, breathe near it, or step outside on a humid day. So the real engineering problem was never, can silk vibrate? It's, can you protect silk from the one thing it can't ignore? That single detail is why nobody's selling silk headphones at the mall yet. Researchers have actually tried solving this from the opposite direction. One approach coated spider silk with conductive carbon nanotubes, giving the fiber both strength and the ability to carry an electrical charge directly through it. If you can make the silk itself conduct electricity, you don't just use it as a moving membrane, you start collapsing the coil and the diaphragm into a single fiber. That's not better headphones. That's a completely different category of speaker, one where the vibrating part and the wiring part are the same strand. So picture the finished object now, because you've earned it. A small ring magnet fixed in place. A whisper-thin membrane pulled from silk, stretched taut across a frame lighter than a coin. A hair-fine coil resting where the two nearly touch. Wire it to a signal, and that whole tiny system starts trembling in time with a song, pushing air, translating current into motion, and motion into sound, thousands of times every second, without you touching a single moving mechanical part with your fingers. You started this looking at a rock and a spider's leftover thread, certain neither one could possibly matter. You're ending with the exact principle every headphone company on the planet depends on, just built from the rawest ingredients. Biology and physics were willing to hand you. Nothing about it was fake, and nothing about it needed a factory. It needed a magnet, a signal, and a material spiders have been quietly perfecting for over 100 million years, long before anyone thought to put it in your ears. Somewhere out there right now, a spider is spinning a thread, strong enough, light enough, and fast enough to one day sit inches from your eardrum. It doesn't know that. It's just building a web. You're the one who looked at a rock and a thread and saw a speaker hiding inside both of them.